Okay, I think I'm supposed to have some kind of a little countdown clock or a hourglass or something to count down till 8 o'clock, but I'm starting the live stream with a little bit of spare time so that people have a chance to log in because I got some things I need to talk about with the situation around data centers that I think a lot of people are aware of, but surprisingly, I keep running into people who are not aware of anything at all. So, hello to my friends who are here. If you're already here and you have a text thread of real estate besties, go ahead and tell them because this is very real estate when we're talking the data center piece that I'm very laser beam focused on right now. And there's a million angles we can go in on data centers, but we're not going to go in a million angles tonight because I'm learning as a live streamer that I need to be more focused. I'm learning. I'm a very good learner. And you should tell me in the comments where you're from so that I know who my real estate friends are that are here with me tonight. And let me know what you think about 8 o'clock because I know that in real estate, this is about the only chance you have to finish your emails and get stuff done because during the day you're doing a million other things. But this is very important to our communities and to the people that we serve through real estate. So hit me up in the comments. Hey, Gina. Oh, from Hawaii. It's middle of your day right now. So you've got different schedule than I do altogether. It's finally getting dark outside. And oh, what's up, Chris? Let's say guns coming in from Lubbock. Always good to see my Lubbock friends. And I could share screen. So I will say the next time I do a live, I'm going to use the Restream platform so I can show y'all some of the images that I have. And I probably need to put those together. I don't know what the crowns mean, but I mean, I guess a crown is a thank you for subscribing or clicking like or something. I don't know, but click like and subscribe. So what I wanted to talk about tonight, I don't know how many of y'all saw the Substack that I dropped today. Not today. Today's Thursday. It was Tuesday, but it was super long. And I have been very wound up about data centers for a while. And I'm very glad to see that a lot of people are talking about the impact of them. And I do know that I'm probably somewhat over the target because when I'm talking about data centers, I'm now getting bot attacks on X, which means obviously the paid bots know what they're supposed to talk about. And they accuse me of supporting the Chinese because I don't want data centers everywhere. But that's actually not the case because we are a country of freedom and free expression. And so I want to talk about the impact of data centers in a way that realtors have to be prepared for. And if you're not a realtor, you're a normal person who has stumbled over onto my live stream because you followed me in Western North Carolina, then you should also know that I've been wildly concerned about the water issues in Western North Carolina too. And all of this winds up being, oh, let me fix my sound here. I forgot I had a new microphone so y'all could hear me better. Hopefully that is a better sound. And you can totally tell me that in the comments if that's better. I'm put my glasses on because I wrote myself a note here. But anyway, thinking about the situation with water, I will actually reference what happened in Western North Carolina because, of course, Hurricane Helene hits us in September of 20 and 24. And one of the water issues that was going on was the relocation of our rivers because the way that those storms came down and we had the French Broad River was 28 feet above flood stage. You had entire rivers that moved. And when the rivers moved, of course, they took the wildlife with them. So the trout are now in different places, the bears and the rattlesnakes and the elk and everything else that relies on that water watched their patterns move. But in the real estate side, the wildest thing, and we're still trying to figure out how to solve it, by the way, is that in North Carolina, because we're a colony, number, we brought you America. You're welcome, courtesy of my patriot ancestors and a whole bunch of other very stubborn people. Our surveys in this area are from the very old setup of what's called meets and bounds. And meets and bounds might say that your survey on your property, it goes from this big boulder over here to Jane's oak tree over here. And then we have the river on this side. And that's actually how a lot of the surveys were written. So it's not gridded out like you see in a lot of the Midwestern states. And so because of that, if your survey on your generational land in the mountains has a river or a water source as one of its boundaries, and then that boundary moved because of Hurricane Helene, you may have lost part of your land because of a storm you could not control. And right now, everybody's trying to figure out what's that going to look like for water rights, who owns the water, who owns the land. And of course, we know that based on our founding documents, we the people own the land and we're supposed to have the consent of the governed. Well, what's happening with data centers right now, y'all, there is very little consent of the governed. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight, because if you're in real estate, you are going to have to get up to speed on this stuff. And for the record, this is not a partisan conversation. And so if you have come here to try and turn this into this side says this and this side says that, then I'm just going to ignore you in the comments, because this is an everybody issue. And frankly, that's the thing about property rights. They were designed by our founding fathers in the Federalist Papers to be everybody issues. And if you weren't aware, let me give you something you should know while you're clicking like and subscribe and texting your besties. We were promised in our founding documents life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Do y'all realize that was the backup phrase? Originally, it was going to say life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, because our founding fathers understood how important it was for people to have their own stake and to know that it wasn't going to be a gift from anybody, but you could work and get to it. And of course, in the history of our country, that's been expanded in such a way that, well, now we have property rights for people who aren't even American, but that's a different rabbit hole for a different day. So I want to talk to you about the data center side. These data centers that are coming in are obviously a hot topic. And in the real estate side, we're getting caught in the both sides world, because if you happen to be a realtor who represents a landowner, they're looking at an offer potentially of the kind of money that only happens to people who win the Powerball with 8 buddies from work, and then they have to share it. And it's hard for people to resist generational money. So when we talk about that generational money, I just want to tell you that not every landowner and not every parcel would be attractive to a data center, because what they're looking for is water, and they're looking for proximity to substations and to power. That's the two biggest things for a data center. And in addition, you have to have the acreage that would support a giant facility. So the one that's not too far from my property, I guess it's probably 5 miles away as the crow flies, is on 122 acres. And that property is going to have 2.5 million square feet. And Duke Energy, which is headquartered here in Charlotte, North Carolina, is building a substation on that parcel to support that data center. And so what I want you to know is that when a data center comes in, they want water because they have to cool the servers that are in the property. So if you're the person who's thinking, I'm just getting up to speed on this, hey, no shame, no judgment here. But you're being told that it's any water. It's not any water, y'all. The water for the data centers has to be potable. And so it has to be clean drinking water. They're not using water from streams and from the hog lagoons that are in eastern North Carolina. They're using clean drinking water. Y'all know how expensive that is. And you also know, if you're in West Texas, you've seen this for a long time. There's water wars going on because the amount that it costs to generate the water is high. And depending on whether you have groundwater or you're buying surface water, or if you're on the coast and you're doing some kind of a desalination project, it all costs money to generate the water that we all take for granted, because we're also used to going to the spigot in the kitchen, cutting it on, and you have cold water. We're used to going to the bathroom and no problem flushing your commode. You go to a hotel and you're going in and washing your face. And it's so natural to us in the US that we don't think about it. Well, when you're thinking about a data center, it's going to have cooling, because that 2.5 million square feet that's being constructed right over here is going to have a lot of servers in that building. You're talking hundreds of thousands of servers, if not millions, depending on the size of the facility. And because they're generating heat all the time, it's like your stupid iPhone. If y'all noticed how hot these things will get when you use it for a minute, some apps make it run really hot. And in fact, here in a North Carolina summer, you get one hot day and put it too close to the windshield and don't get it out of the sunlight, and that thing will overheat in a minute. Well, that's what's going on with your servers. And so they want to cool them with water. Well, the system that they are designing is, of course, called closed loop. And that just means the water runs through and it evaporates off. They're recapturing it to run it back through. It sounds so simple and easy until you realize that in an area, I can only use my area as an example because I don't know every area. We have a water shortage right now because we've been in a drought this spring, didn't get enough water. We don't always get snowpack, but we always get rain. We never get snowpack. Who am I kidding? But we do always get rain, except this year it's been super dry. And so now you have the communities that are used to buying water either out of the Yadkin River or the Catawba River. The communities are buying water for drinking water. So what happens here is that now you're going to have neighborhoods competing with a data center for the water. And I don't really have to be the one to surprise y'all by telling you this, but when you are a one homeowner competing with a gigantic LLC for the resources, who y'all think's going to get it? I mean, come on now. You know what's going to happen. We've seen this in almost every space in our country, in our world right now. The big things win. Big food, big pharma, big ag, big everything. In fact, we've seen in real estate, big is happening in real estate right now, and it bothers me tremendously. What is coming in over here? Oh, it's my team. Hey, thank you for a link to the Substack article. If y'all didn't look at it, it is a free post that I put up. Hey, what's up, Central Illinois? Share with a friend, like, and subscribe. I'm supposed to remind y'all of that. So anyway, when you're competing as a homeowner with a data center, you're going to lose. And when you look at the size of these data centers, there is going to be a twofold utility fight. There's one over the water, which is needed for cooling, but there's also the power. We've all seen some of the stories about the 62-acre data center that's going in out in Utah. And yes, that's 62 acres. And in North Carolina, we don't have big parcels like that, like you have out west. Out west, I know 62 acres is basically a subdivision lot, but that is a substation, a data center that is going to use as much power as the city of Manhattan. Are you serious? And for what? So y'all can make more fake real estate headshot memes? Come on, you're using AI and kind of thoughtlessly forgetting that every time you fire up your AI, your GPTs, you're using a pint of water. So there's the stat you want to keep in mind, that every use of an AI product is a pint of drinking water. All right. So that's why a lot of us are getting wound up. All right. So let's talk about something on that waterfront. Speaking of the cost of making it clean enough to drink and the competing nature of the market, which is known as what? Oh, that's right. Supply and demand. So the demand in a lot of communities was already high because here in the Charlotte area, the data point shows that we're getting 150 new people every day moving here. And they're not just all from California. They're not all from New York. We have people from all over the world because there is a huge concentration of H-1Bs in Charlotte. And of course, an H-1B comes with an H-1-4 and the unlimited numbers of kids. And so you have new people here every day. Every new person here is another strain on your water sources. Now take all the people and the huge amount of increase in the population and add a 2.5 million square foot data center on top of that. So now you've put a huge strain on the water system. And then Charlotte just last week put forth a request to the Catawba River authorities asking for 30 million additional gallons. Well, they want that, they say, for the population growth. I'm not stupid, y'all. That water is for the data centers in addition to the population growth. All right, so now you put your real estate hat on, okay? You're in real estate. You're used to telling people about their monthly payment being PITI. For those of y'all that have wandered up in here and you're not in real estate, that's principal interest, which is how a lot of mortgage lenders try to suck you in with a good-looking payment. But your very smart realtor says, that's not everything. You got to calculate property taxes, which in many areas in North Carolina, including my county, which is one of the top 10 most expensive counties now, that's your property taxes. And how much control do you have over that, friends? Oh, that's right. You have the power of the ballot box, but then you have weak people that get elected and won't do anything with it. And then we have insurance. And we all know in real estate that homeowners insurance is one of the fastest rising costs. And it's one of those things that's very seldom talked about because nobody really knows what to do with our broken homeowners insurance system. And spoiler alert, it is not to tell people to get up and leave areas where floods have happened, because I have to remind y'all, when the floods hit Western North Carolina, a lot, in fact, the bulk of the people who lost their homes did not have flood insurance, nor did they live in flood zones, because when a river goes 28 feet above flood stage, you can't plan for that. And you have a lot of people who just wouldn't have had the resources to pay for that insurance anyway because they weren't exactly living high on the hog. So you've got those four factors are what we look at for your house payment to help people put a budget together that makes sense. Now you should know that you is going to have to be added in. So I would just suggest that if you happen to be watching this video or whatever clip we come out with from this, that you start talking to your home buyers about PITIU, or actually I should make it PITUI, so it's PTUI. I cracked myself up. When you think about it this way, we're going to have to be talking to our home buyers about utilities, y'all, because it's been a number that a lot of people could stomach, because our municipal water and sewer in the US, for the most part, has been very affordable until recently. And if you're paying attention in your communities to Nextdoor and to every other forum on Facebook, you're seeing a lot of people talking about their water bills are getting jacked up. Now, if you live on a well like I do, I really would just love to put a moat and a fence around my property and keep anybody from ever coming on it. But that's not realistic because my well uses groundwater. And so I have to be very thoughtful about, first of all, how I take care of my garden and how I take care of the land around my house, because it impacts the water. But I know that in the event that something goes wrong, I'm going to be dealing with my water in a different way than a suburban neighborhood dweller is. But that cost is skyrocketing. Look at any community where a data center has recently opened up, and those numbers are huge. And in fact, there's a map in my Substack of the states and the number of data centers already in operation. If you're a realtor in Northern Virginia, I guarantee you are seeing people that are already struggling because of their utility payments. Now, I want you to think about as well the second thing that these data centers are consuming in great quantities, and that's, of course, your electric power. And when you think about the electric power, just look at Texas as an example. When that giant ice storm hit Texas, what was that? Is that 2 years ago, Chris? You would remember because you live there. But when that ice storm hit in February, the grid couldn't handle it and it went down and people died because they could not get access to heat and to resources. They couldn't leave. They just had nowhere, no help. And the elderly, of course, the most at risk when something like that goes down. And so we saw the grid unable to handle an ice storm. What in the world makes us think that a grid that can't handle an ice storm can handle the sheer volume of data centers that is coming into Texas? Because it's getting them just at a clip right behind Northern Virginia, where they are shoving them in every single corner. So when you think about the grid can't handle the growth, can't handle the population, can't handle a storm. Now it's got to handle data centers. What's going to happen to the cost of your electric power, y'all? We saw it here in North Carolina because we had a super cold January where it didn't get above freezing. And yes, we whine about it because we do not ask Northerners to bring their weather with them when they come. And to be fair, I married a Yankee, and so I've done my part for reconciliation. And he would admit as well that he doesn't want to have below freezing temperatures every day in January. That drove the power bills up. And as I'm talking to buyers and I'm talking to sellers, when their numbers double and they're going from $200 a month to $400, $450, $500 a month, you have people that cannot afford their homes anymore. This is something we have to be talking about as realtors. And if you want to, I'm about to get wound up. I'm just have to get myself under control here. If you want to know why I get so aggravated with our trade association at the National Association of Realtors, they are still in Washington, D.C. asking for more protected classes on fair housing instead of focusing on an issue that is happening right in front of us and is going to run people out of their homes. I am not okay with people getting run out of their homes for costs that are happening that were not the consent of the governed. Because the data centers that are causing a doubling and a tripling of power cost and a doubling and tripling of water bills, Nobody asked for these in their community, except maybe the homeowner who's going to make their millions of dollars. And I don't fault them because I am a property rights girl. I'm a free market girl. If you own 100 acres and you want to sell it to a data center, the side of my mind that read the Federalist paper says it's your land, do what you want to do. The other side of me that says we're told in the Bible to take care of aliens, widows, and orphans says, wait a minute, there's an impact all around you from this particular land use. And so if I could show y'all the map, but I don't know how on YouTube, which is why I'm switching to Restream next time. So go ahead and give me a like and a share. And then what I will tell you is that I pulled up this data center on this 122 acres at Highway 49 and 485. So if you wanted to Google it, it is Powerhouse is building the data center, and it's right near UNC Charlotte. So I look at this parcel, and if you pull the Polaris map or the Google map, the GIS map, what you will see all around it are neighborhoods. You have thousands of people who live right around this property who are now going to have to compete with a data center for power and for water. And they're also going to have, of course, the environmental detriment, the detriments to the environment of the noise, because these things hum all the time. And when they're not humming and their backup diesel generators come on, the hum becomes a low roar. You can pull up any of the videos online and see this for yourself. And in fact, one of my clients, well, she's a past client now because they went ahead and bought their house, but actually they're just friends now. So anyway, you know how it goes in real estate. She messaged me after she saw the SUBSTACK post to let me know about what's going on with her brother who lives in Northern Virginia, who is panicking right now because he wants to sell his house, but nobody's buying where they are because he's inside of 2 miles to several data centers. Because if you look at the map in Northern Virginia, y'all, it's crazy. But what he has found is that the anxiety he feels from never having the quiet that he used to have is what's making him want to leave his home. Think about this. We help people get their piece of the American dream. We help them pick out that house and we watch their eyes sparkle. I'm like, I love this so much. And my kids are going to love it. It's great. And then they move into that house and maybe you live on the interstate. Well, we've seen that people that live on the interstate, they can develop a noise blindness to the white noise from the highway. We've seen people that live on properties that back up to power towers. They're used to the sound too. But what you are finding is that this is different because it's a low roar that doesn't stop. And if you want to think about how you feel when you go to the mountains or you go anywhere that's quiet and you just go, I can breathe for a second. That's been taken away from this man, from his family, and from all of his neighbors without his consent. It was the same issue that I had with the COVID shot. There was no duly informed consent. There was no consent of the governed. There was bullying and there was basically forcing people to do something without information. The data centers are no different. There is not appropriate information being given to communities. Now, I will say in regard to this cost and thinking about the future needs for Patui, that we've got to, okay, so it's happening in Australia too, in Victoria. Thank you for that information from down under. I worry about y'all because your freedoms have been stripped from you so effectively. I mean, and y'all, this is your chance to speak up. And I don't think you can necessarily vote your way out of it. You're going to have to get smart to get your way out of this. And we're going to have to get really loud. And as realtors, there's 1.5 million realtors in the country. If NAR, and I'm sure that somebody from NAR watches my stuff because y'all hate me still, but I know that you still appreciate that I do have a very good working brain. If NAR would say to the members, we need to work together to say something because we speak on behalf of our buyers and our sellers. And frankly, when we speak on behalf of the people, like I'm mentioning to y'all, my past client who is my friend, I'm also speaking for her brother who doesn't have a realtor relationship right now. Why are we not using our strength and our power? And why are we not talking to our elected officials about shutting these things down? Now, I do have to give a shout out in North Carolina because our legislature currently has 5 bills that are being proposed around data centers. The one that's made some traction and going to House rules has been sponsored by Dean Arp from Union County. Dean's an engineer, if that tells y'all anything about the guy. He is fantastic. And this particular proposal doesn't ban data centers, which is what I would want, because I could live without AI. I lived in a world with a rotary phone and no answer machine, and I'm fine. What he has proposed is that there can't be a detrimental effect to people's utility bills because of a data center, that it has to figure out its own impact without destroying taxpayers. So that's a step in the right direction. And of course, the opposition to this bill was making some rumbling about how if we have to have enough power for both the homeowners and the data center, it's going to fire up coal plants. Just stop. Just stop. The whole is everything a scam? I just starting to believe everything is a scam. So, oh, thank you for dropping the numbers for how many data centers are in operation, not even just been planned. That map was kind of crazy, the one that's in my Substack, and you should be showing this to people. But you can also know that if you look up House Bill 730 for North Carolina, if you are in North Carolina, you can reach out to your representative and ask them to get behind something like this, so that at least there is a start from a real estate perspective to helping people stay in their homes. And then if you're in another state, maybe you pick up our text and take it to your favorite legislators as well. And if you're in Victoria, Australia, that you take this to your premier and say, look, we can't do this at the expense of the everyday citizen, because y'all, at some point, the citizens are going to have to get louder on something besides social media and make our voices heard, like happened in Missouri this past week. If y'all didn't see that, I don't know if I mentioned that. Oh, it's going to be in my upcoming Substack for next week. I do have a what we can do Substack for next week that has some ideas for how you can fight data centers in your community and some resources. But the neighbors came back after finding out that their elected leaders had approved a $6 billion data center behind their backs and ousted all of them in the vote. And so the question now becomes what they can do about this proposed data center that is going to be within the bounds of the law. And frankly, this is why I have been saying for years, and for those of y'all that have ever come to hear me speak, you know that I am a fan of realtors serving on planning and zoning. And the reason we need to be in the room is to bring this kind of a perspective in, because I really don't think that all of our local elected officials are idiots. I really don't. But they can't know everything, and they can't have perspective on every profession and every angle. So you, my friends, could be the one that goes to planning and zoning and says, hey, have you thought about the fact that this data center sounds really good? And I know y'all love Amazon and Google and the Facebook and all the rest of them. However, when it triples the cost of water and triples the cost of power, what y'all going to do about the fixed income senior citizen who's been in this community for 40 years? They're duly retired. They volunteered in the PTA, and they have done everything in this community to make it better. And now we're setting them up for not just failure, but we're setting them up for poor health. This is where we have to get busy exercising our ability to show up with our brains and with our confidence, and frankly, with the information. And so I want y'all to be armed with that as you think about this. But in addition to fighting the data centers, the main thing I want y'all to think about is the resale situation and actually the ability to stay in a house. Now, of course, I did have a realtor, and I know she didn't mean to make my point so eloquently, but she probably couldn't help herself. She sent me a message and said that in her experience, in her state, she represented somebody who sold their land to a data center, and now they had enough money to buy their country estate. And while I appreciate that they were able to go buy something fancy, and I appreciate that she got a transaction, she actually demonstrates the problem most realtors have. Are y'all comfortable hearing the truth about the problem most realtors have? It is that y'all get so buried in a transaction, so focused on this one next deal, this one buyer you're trying to work out, this one seller you really want to sell their property, that you stop looking at the big picture. And I don't say that to be ugly. And I know how hard you work. And I know you've got a lot of balls in the air. And I know that you're unemployed until you get the next sale under your belt. I get all of that. But you cannot, in this particular scenario, and frankly, in any of our other water wars that are going on, get your nose up out of that transaction and pay attention. Now, if this agent had told that person, hey, have you thought about the fact that selling it to this evil, faceless corporation is going to destroy the property value of 1,000 of your neighbors, and you're going to maybe a part of the problem with water and power. You cool with that? Because the seller should know. And if they do just want the money to get out because they don't intend to keep the family farm, they don't care about their family's generational attachment to the land, I get that. But as realtors, we can't control what the outcomes are going to be, and we can't decide what somebody else is going to do. But our strength has always been helping people look at both sides of a situation so they can make their best decision. And frankly, right now, I'm not convinced that we in real estate have been able to give the full picture, because we're just now starting to see some of the impacts. And let's say, oh, hey, Renee, what's up? And thank you for saying that. And make sure you click like and share this with a friend. And actually, by next week, I'll figure out how to pin a comment so y'all can all say hey to Renee right back. And you can also say hey to Canation in Victoria, Australia. All right. So I want to also point out, when we're thinking about the conversation we have to have with buyers about Patui, because we're changing that, right, y'all? This will be our new thing. And in fact, I'm probably going to have to ask my super amazing Michelle, who works for me, much to her chagrin, probably, because she hates and I'm sure loves sometimes. But my idea is we need a graphic about explaining Patui, because it's huge, huge. In fact, I've had a hard enough time trying to help people understand why their property taxes have doubled while the county hasn't cut any of their expenses. And I know inflation hits, but the numbers don't actually add up. And I'm sure that wiser minds than mine can figure that out. And the insurance side, we know that there are some solutions that are possible if the private market would get involved, but the utility thing is huge. Now, I also want to point out something else. When we're looking at the real estate impact of this, no, we don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now and 5 years from now. But I want to give you a perspective as a child of the 70s and 80s, which I'm just going to go ahead and tell y'all, I think was the last really amazing decade we have. Even though the millennials seem to think the 90s were great, the 90s were fine. But you didn't have Duran Duran. So I'm just going to point that out. But when we came up in the 70s and 80s, we were the generation who went to the mall. So I went there with my friends. I was not cool. I was not hip. And I did try really hard because I had the crunchy ball and I had the perms and I wanted to be cool. Never destined for that, because I was in the nerd herd and I was actually able to be friends with everybody because I didn't speak. I was the quietest mouse you've ever seen. And actually, so was my best friend, Heather. And she sounds like Minnie Mouse, but we were both fairly quiet. And I love her all to pieces. I love my friends from high school, but we would go to the mall. We would go to Carolina Mall and we would walk around. And if we were really fortunate, our parents would let us go down to Eastland Mall. And if you're from Charlotte, from a certain era, you would know that Eastland Mall was the good mall. It had all the layers, and way down at the bottom was an ice skating rink, where if your other dear friend Carrie had a crush and was even dating somebody who played midnight hockey there named Gary, then you would have to go with Carrie so you could watch Gary. This is actually sounding kind of like it's made up for a TV program, but it's not. But we would go and watch the hockey players, and it would be the girls in a cluster and the boys over here in a cluster. And we walked around and we went in Spencer's and we went in Walden Books and we went to Orange Julius and we spent our money. And that's how those giant buildings were used. Wherever you live right now, I can pretty much guarantee there is an empty mall with thousands and thousands of empty square feet, a gigantic parking lot that's been taken over by weeds and maybe by food trucks. And it's not a vibrant part of your community anymore. And a lot of communities spend a lot of energy trying to figure out what to do with them. Do you turn it into self-storage? Do you turn it into a small business incubator? Of course, there's people that want to turn it into residential, and they find out the cost of that is insanely prohibitive because of code, water, sewer, ingress, egress. It's almost impossible to turn a mall into housing without tearing it down and starting over, which is actually cheaper. And so I bring this up because if we can't deal with aging malls themselves, what are we going to do with this 2.5 million square foot data center that is 5 miles from my house when the technology has moved on? You've all heard of Moore's Law, correct? Moore's Law is the law that says technology will double in uh, impact. Hang on, I just lost the word. I just had a middle-aged brain moment. I bragged on my brain and it left me. It was mad. Anyway, Moore's law says that technology doubles itself every so often. The servers that are filling up these data centers right now, do y'all really think that in the next 3 to 5 years, the technology is going to stay stagnant? Of course it's not, because all the technology right now is being designed to take humans out of their purpose, which work actually and purpose make you a more productive being, and your soul is different when you're productive. Y'all know this. So they're expanding in capacity and everything's changing. So if you have 1 million servers in this giant building and in 3 to 5 years they're obsolete, now what? All right, some of y'all are going to say it's fine. They'll just put new servers in. Oh, okay. All right, so we're going to double the number of servers and double the amount of water and power. Okay, so we're going to continue increasing the impact on our utility burden. Okay, so then what happens when they shrink it all down into something small? Oh, like this, which is a supercomputer in my hand. And I'm old enough to have watched Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn in Desk Sets. And if y'all have not seen Desk Sets, it's one of the best Christmas movies that most people have never seen. Plus, their romance was just delightful. But the gigantic computer that was in that room that they were so not very excited about having until they learned how to use it was not even as powerful as the text messages on this phone. I'm pretty aware that sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, these are going to be considered fairly obsolete, even though the technology has slowed down its progression at this moment. That's when they're going to want to imprint chips in us. And that's when you should say no, because that's probably the mark of the beast. But, well, what's up, Triad Broker? I love my North Carolina friends. Hey, what's up? So I want you to know this. In that 3 to 5 years, this for 2.5 million square foot building, would you say it's plausible that it won't be needed, that everything will have shrunk down to the head of a pin, and we won't need 2.5 million square feet? Okay, so now what happens to that 2.5 million square foot building? Is it going to sit there empty? What is the highest and best use of a former data center? I was reading a white paper earlier today about what's happened in Idaho with potato farms. If y'all haven't read this, I shared the link on my X account, which is at Leigh Brown. And yes, I do get a little spicy over there. Just deal with it. But when they were looking at this, they have found that even if you take the environmental panels back out from this potato farm, it's no longer arable land. And so I bring that up because we don't know what the long-term impact is of these data centers. We don't know what those rare earth minerals are going to do to the land around it and if it could ever be put back into any kind of purpose again. So we've got this 2.5 million square foot former data center warehousing. I mean, I guess you could make it into a warehouse, but I'm already a little depressed by how many self-storage places we have. Do all of us need this much junk? In fact, I may have a husband who was grumping on I-95 today. We were on our way back from a very short family vacation, which is, again, my hair's not fixed for 2 lives in a row. I promise. If you tell my hairdresser, I'll have to hurt y'all. But he was noticing the sheer volume of semis, and we have to be super careful around semis because North Carolina seems to enjoy giving out CDLs to people who don't speak English. But anyway, the trucks that were going through, and he said, do we need this much stuff? We don't need this much stuff, y'all. We used to could buy things that lasted for a long time. And in fact, there's a whole movement in real estate. Have y'all seen it too, where buyers are looking for washers and dryers and stoves from the 70s and 80s because they know they're not full of electronics and they don't break and they're actually made out of steel? It's amazing. It's one of the reasons I enjoy being in auction, because if you pick up an old set of appliances, people will be fighting over those. But we're not stupid. So if we are going to turn these giant data centers into warehousing, the question does become what goes into them. Are we going to have more poorly constructed things coming in from overseas that we don't need, that are filling our landfills up? And then I asked this question at a data center panel that I listened to. So I love being a realtor. I can't tell y'all, I love this business. And I especially love being a member of the Realtors Land Institute. So if you're a realtor who does land or is interested in land and the impacts, and this could be subdivision land, it could be farm and ranch, it could be commercial, anything that has to do with land. The Realtors Land Institute is your home. That's RLI Land. And it's an affiliate, kind of like Women's Council or the Residential Real Estate Council. Well, every year we have the National Land Conference. And this past March at the National Land Conference, there was a panel about data centers. So y'all know I'm right in there on the aisle where I can lean out and be seen. And I'm sitting near some dear friends from South Carolina who, well, my one friend, Beth, she wrote this book called it's something about peeing off your porch. And I should remember the title of it, but I pretty much giggle every time I look at it. But she talks about how it feels when people can buy a piece of land and it's so private they can pee off the porch. And I'm not making that up. And if you're from up north or from out west or from Australia, that might sound tacky, but that's just life. So anyway, we were in this panel and there's three fellas on the panel and there's a moderator and they're talking about data centers and they're sharing what makes your land attractive to a data center, which what I was saying earlier in our feed has to do with proximity to power and has to do with the proximity to water, because of course it has to be potable water. And I'm not even making this up. They're sitting back on the stage like this, basically had their little legs kicked up, and they were big time because the deals they're working are 8 and 9 figure deals. I get it. It's big money. I'm small potatoes over here. I can't help it. I will help somebody buy a trailer house. I do not have to be a 9-figure realtor, although it sounds fun, but I don't think that's my people. So anyway, they're talking about these gigantic deals and how much generational money is available to people. And so I did have to ask the question, and I said, what is the disposal plan around data centers? Because I know that here where I live in North Carolina in Cabarrus County, we have one of the largest landfills in the Southeast, and it's at the end of its lifespan. So in the short rows, as we would say, it's about done. And when it's done, I don't know where they're going to put the next landfill. And that's just a regular household landfill that holds all the junk that people are buying from Amazon and throwing away. And then the construction landfill is a little bit further away, which has all of the construction trash to it. So I said, well, we got all these little servers. They got these little tiny chips in them. They got a lot of rare earth minerals. Where are they going to go? Because I'm pretty sure they're not great for the environment. They're not great for the soil. They're not great for the groundwater. And we're already worried about regenerative soil as something we have to be focused on to protect our food supply. And I was told, oh, well, it's 100% sustainable. And I said, actually, I don't think anything's 100% sustainable. And they said, oh, we can recycle 100% of our servers and 100% of the chips. And I said, actually, can you? Because I've seen where these are actually recycled. When you look at the photos of what's happening in the slums of India, for example, or of Argentina, you see children, you see child labor taking these things apart with no protection. And so their lifespan is cut down to a minimum so they can kind of recycle server parts. And I said, thank you for sharing this with me. I don't believe a word you're saying, but what is the disposal plan? Because you're not going to sit here and tell me that you can have 1 million servers in a 2.5 million square foot building, and when you go to change them all out, that there's nothing that goes into the trash can. I just don't buy it. Well, the panel was pretty much made up of that, of the assumption that, this is a really long loop I'm making here, but thank y'all for being patient. The loop says that we in real estate must be okay with these, because some people in real estate are going to be the sellers who cash out and make millions and millions of dollars. Some are going to be the brokers who represent the sellers and represent the buyers, and they're going to make really big commissions. Well, I'm in real estate. I would probably be the person who says to somebody, can't we talk about a conservation easement instead? Can't we talk about a different pathway to the future of your land besides turning it into something that has a big price tag right this minute, an even bigger price tag on the neighbors, and unknown price tags in the future? Because in real estate, we have to get better at looking at the unintended consequences. We've already seen the unintended consequences at the National Association of Realtors have taken the eye off the ball for what our public policy advocacy should have looked like, because we have not advocated for property rights. We have not protected realtors and entrepreneurs. We are currently watching our MLS get stomped on and turned into some kind of a utility that the FTC is licking their chops about right now. And because we haven't paid attention to that, we're also not paying attention to this. And so I'm just going to tell y'all that we in real estate are going to have to lead the way on this. I think we are the right voices to go to planning and zoning because we understand real estate. We understand the impact on other houses of neighborhoods. And in fact, I want to point this out too. Those of y'all that were in real estate during the Great Recession, you should raise your little hands because we are survivors. And some might say that those in real estate from the Great Recession have a little bit of PTSD when it comes to market shifts because we've lived through a really awful one. And it wasn't just awful because we lost our way of life, but we watched our clients lose everything because their down payment was gone because the house price vanished. And we watched people find that they couldn't stay there because the bank had more of a right to the house than they did. And we all of that happen. And we watched people get hurt. And you know that what happened in some neighborhoods was if they had one foreclosure, but nobody a little bit, but it was fairly stable. But in some of these neighborhoods where the loans that were given out, the no doc, stated doc, 0 down, 80 wrap loans, you had a lot of people with no way to stay put in that house. And if a whole bunch of them went into foreclosure, what happened to everybody in the neighborhood, y'all? Everybody went down. Nobody was sheltered from this. Nobody. And so when you look at what's happening with data centers, I'm looking right up the street at me. Those neighborhoods have no shelter from that data center. And back to my original point, there was no consent of the governed. Nobody asked them, nobody warned them, nobody told them. And so when we look at the economy right now, where we're shedding thousands and thousands of jobs to AI, and the people who aren't losing their job to AI are losing it to H-1Bs, and they're losing it to all kinds of people who are taking their jobs from them, what are they going to do? Is the data center situation going to cause the next wave of foreclosures? Is it going to cause more people to lose the American dream they've worked so hard for? And yes, there'll be a dozen people in the comments somewhere who are going to say, well, if it crashes, now young people can buy. Okay, great. If it crashes, yes, people do get to buy, but people get hurt in the process. And I don't like people getting hurt, which is the basic point of this whole live stream and why I don't like data centers, because people are getting hurt for the sake of somebody making a meme of a cat or of a politician. And we all watched what happened to Thomas Massey. The one man who was speaking up for the regular person got taken down by data centers. And if you're not following Baron Coleman, you really need to be following Baron Coleman because he's on top of this. Leah Files is on top of this, and the Dre Dossier are the shows that you should be getting some information from. Let's see what's over here in the comments. Oh, warehousing for furniture. I mean, I would love to see furniture manufacturing come back to the Triad area. I would love to see all of the stuff of NAFTA undone and bring it back. I pay more for my North Carolina furniture, but I'll tell you, as somebody in the auction business as well, nothing makes my heart sadder than to see how people don't value Broyhill. They don't value Ethan Allen. They don't value the high quality stuff that Thomasville once made. So we could bring that back, but I don't think they need 2.5 million square feet at the corner of 49 and near UNCC. And yes, the young people, it's we're doing a great disservice to the young generation right now, y'all. And as a middle-aged person, I can see both sides of it because my children are Generation Z, and I lived in the time before all of this foolishness that's come in here, which means my generation, my Gen X's, we got to stand up. We've been ignored for a long time, y'all, because the boomers fight with the millennials, but the Gen X's, we could probably fix this because we're smart. All right. So anyway, that is what I wanted to share with y'all tonight. So please make sure and check out my Substack if you have not. Share it with somebody. There is a follow-up post coming next week where I will have some good action items for how you can use some federal and state angles to help your community push back on data centers. But in specific for realtors, please start talking to your buyers about Patui. We have got to help them factor in utilities, particularly if you are in an area that's being impacted by data centers. And when I come back live next week, I want to talk a little bit more about how to figure out who is involved in the data centers in your community and again, some more of these action steps about what you can do. So if you did not already, click subscribe, click the like button. Thank you for hanging out with me this late on a Thursday night. And I hope everybody has an amazing Memorial Day weekend. And wherever you live, do something to celebrate America 250 while we still got her.